Poor lighting? Check. Unbrushed hair? Check. No makeup whatsoever? Check. Let's make a video. So hi everybody, it's been quite a while since I made a video, music or otherwise, but I have some pretty exciting news to share, or at least it's exciting to me, and I really wanted to talk to somebody about it. I made a video quite a few years ago now regarding how I recovered from an eating disorder, and this is kind of a follow-up to that one. Just to let anybody know, if you are squeamish about women anatomy, go ahead and click off now, and if you're going to be an adult about it, then go ahead and continue to listen. But what I didn't mention in my last video was the one follow-up that's followed me about the disorder for many years now, which was the loss of my period. It's just something that happens a lot to people who either over-exercise, or they're too stressed, or they're not eating enough, and eventually the woman's body just stops menstruating in order to conserve energy. And I lost that about a couple months into my disorder, and so my doctors figured that it was from my restrictive eating, and they put me on birth control to try to regulate my cycle. And I know this doesn't seem very eventful, but hang in there with me. That was back in about 2011, and it seemed, logical that once I gained the weight back, I would get my period back, which would indicate that my body was healthy again, and then life could continue forward. Well, I gained back the weight, about 20-30 pounds, probably closer to 30, and nothing happened. I went off birth control once I was at school, just because I wasn't able to get back to my prescription, and I wasn't sexually active, so I didn't really need it anyway. And I was hoping that I would get my period back, and then nothing happened. And this continued for a few years after that, and I went back to the doctor, kind of trying to ask me, hey, why am I not getting this cycle back? Is there something still wrong with me? Have I not gained anything back? Is there some hormonal problem? And the doctor did a few hormone tests, and they did some gynecological tests, and they said, no, nothing's wrong. It's probably just delayed. We'll put you back on birth control. Just because, especially when it comes to bone health, the level of estrogen that comes with having your cycle is really crucial. And once you're 25, I believe is the age they told me, I'll have to check that again, but then you stop growing, I guess, in your bone density, or it's really crucial the years before 25 in order to stave off osteoporosis later on. So that was their main concern. And so I went back on it for a couple more years, and then I got into later in my 20s, and I decided I really need to figure out what's wrong. I really need to figure out why I need to be on birth control to have my period. This seems a little off. And so a few years of testing went by, and it wasn't until this past year that I finally was really homing in on it. We had a couple different diagnoses. We figured it might be Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yeah, PCOS, which is pretty common. But I didn't get even with the ultrasound that they did, I might have PCOS, which wasn't a good enough diagnosis for me. So I went back, and then they decided, looking back at my charts, they're like, well, you probably have hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is what they thought I had back in high school, which is when women lose their periods because of either restrictive eating or over-exercising or over-stressing. So the only really way to recover from that is to gain weight back and to de-stress and to stop exercising. And so that was a little frustrating, because I'm already back to my weight pre-disorder. And while I'm in a lot better place now, I'm definitely a lot healthier at this weight, and for me to gain any weight would feel a little off to me, and it'd probably have some impacts on my health. And so I finally got a referral to the endocrinologist last week. And I went in there, and we went through all of the history again of the different times when I was on birth control and how regular my periods were before that. And he was going through this list of the basic questions, and he got to one about smell. For people who don't know me, I've had anosmia my whole life, and I'm just so used to not being able to smell that it was just kind of a quirk at this point. I had to be careful not to burn food, because I'm not going to smell things burning. It means that I have 2 cats, which makes it easier on me, and a little less easy on my guests if I forget to clean the litter box for that week. And it's kind of stuff like that. I never really registered me. I didn't really lose anything regarding my smell, and so I didn't really think of anything of it. And his eyes lit up. And we had to clinically test it first, and by clinically test, I mean he had me close my eyes and had me try to smell different things he found in the office. I have anosmia, so I couldn't tell any. And he had me smell like some alcohol and some coffee, and I could feel the alcohol, but I couldn't smell either. And so we determined that yes, I do have anosmia. And I remember hearing him out in the hallway that he was super excited because apparently he had a diagnosis in mind, and it was one of the rare diagnoses. So when he came back in, we finished up the examination, and he told me that we have to check first to have an MRI to make sure there's nothing structurally wrong with my pituitary gland and rule that out. But if my MRI goes well, it means that I probably have Kallmann Syndrome, which is determined in women by lack of pubertal maturation, and i.e. not having or having irregular periods or no period at all, and anosmia. So it turns out that all this time, my anosmia and my amenorrhea are most likely linked. And if this is the case, then going forward, I'm going to have hormonal treatments, but it's treatments that I have a plan for. And it means that while my fertility is affected, there is a way for me to still have a family in the future. And it's been years, and so I'm kind of excited about this diagnosis, but it's not really something you can really post about on social media, because for some reason people get a little squeamish when it comes to women and their periods and stuff like that. But another big thing that's been a huge relief for me is all this time I thought I was doing something wrong. I thought maybe I hadn't gained enough weight back from my eating disorder, or maybe my eating disorder had come at such a pivotal point in my growth that I messed up my body forever. And that meant I was not going to be able to have a family, and I was going to ruin my bone health, stuff like that. And it turns out that I thought I had hated my body so much that I broke it. And Kallmann's is genetic, which means I would have had to deal with something like this anyway. And I want to clarify that this is not me trying to excuse my eating disorder. It's not trying to invalidate it. I mean, it's still something that I wish I hadn't gone through. It still had physical effects and probably will impact the rest of my life. But it has these years of guilt kind of rush off my shoulders, and then have a way forward when it comes to my treatment plan. Just being able to put a name to this is so liberating, and I'm super excited about it. Just because it was super frustrating not to be able to determine why I wasn't having my period. And it seems like such a small thing, and that to some people actually kind of framed it as a blessing that I didn't have to deal with the cramps, I didn't have to deal with the hormone swings. But for the past couple of years, something's been wrong. And that was the biggest sign that something was wrong for me. I was a grown woman who wasn't having this key part of my life. I wasn't able to relate to other women who were going through this, or who would have their cycle every month, and it's just kind of frustrating to not be able to relate to that, and to have this sign of clearly something being wrong and not really having my concerns heard. And now I've finally got my concerns heard, and I actually might have a way forward. And that's super exciting. I'm trying not to pin all of my hopes on it, because for all I know, something could show up in the MRI that has a completely different diagnosis. But so far, it looks like this is probably going to be the one. And so that's just been super exciting, and I wanted to talk to somebody about it. And thanks for listening.